In this video, we'll be discussing about corrosion, its types, corrosion causes, and some of the prevention techniques. So let's begin. First of all, let's discuss what is corrosion. So corrosion is a natural event that represents a return of the metals to the more natural states as minerals and oxides. So deteriorative mechanisms are different for the three types. In metals, there is an actual loss of either by dissolution or by the formation of non-metallic scale or film. So in corrosion, what tries to happen is the metal or the alloy tries to return back to its original natural form in which that existed in terms of ore or in the state of minerals. So basically it is the reverse of the extractive metallurgical process. As you can see in this figure, that from the ores and the minerals, the metal is extracted, then it is treated uh, uh, and purified, and then used in the applications which are thermodynamically unstable due to high energy and high instability, and then it tries to react with the environment or the corrosion environment, and tries to get back to its original thermodynamically stable form with the lowest form of energy uh, in terms of oxides and the minerals which it was present previously. So this is basically corrosion. In the corrosion, there is always an electrochemical consideration. So as you can see that this is the zinc part, and these are zinc atoms which are dissolved in an acidic solution. So basically when zinc is exposed to an acidic environment or a corrosion medium, you can say, so it loses electrons. So the losing of electron is also termed as oxidation. So the metal is always oxidized when corrosion is happening. And the other part, which is hydrogen, as you know that acids has a positive hydrogen ion, so it would gain the electrons which are lost by the metal and would be reduced. So both the reduction and oxidation reaction are taking place in the while the corrosion is happening. So here you can see that there's oxygen present in the environment, which will be reduced by the electrons of this iron. So this is the iron electrons which oxygen would be getting, and the corrosion product, which is Fe2O3, which is also called rust, is being produced, and you can see that the iron layer is being dissolved. So you can see that the corrosion product, which is rust over here, would be always being formed in the anode, because at anode there is always oxidation, and the metals are being oxidized at anode to form the corrosion product. Here we have a standard hydrogen EMF test in which we can measure the electrode potentials of the metals in comparison with a standard platinum electrode, which is inert basically, and the hydrogen gas, it is covered in hydrogen gas. So the electrode potential of hydrogen is 0 volts, so that we can test it for the other metals. So this the zero electrode hydrogen electrode has a 0 voltage of electrode potential. So in comparison to that, we can measure the exact amount of electrode potential of the metal that is exposed in a corrosion medium or a corrosion environment. All right, so Let's move forward now. Then we have a standard EMF series. So in this series, what we can from this series we can judge that the more anodic the metal is, the more reactive it would be in service or in the applications. So we want, if we want our material to be more cathodic or more inactive or more inert uh, in service, so that it is highly corrosion resistant. Again, there's a galvanic series that ranks the reactivity of metals and alloys in seawater. You can get these series in different corrosion mediums. Here it is the seawater, which is which has a high amount of chlorine in it due to the presence of NaCl. So you can see that the more anodic the metals are, the more active they are, and since the metal which are more cathodic, that are more inert, as you can see over here, we have platinum, we have gold, we have graphite, which is not a metal, but we have put it in the series as it has very inert. Then we can see that magnesium, zinc, cadmium and aluminum alloys are very active, that they are more anodic, and they would be more prone to the corrosion. So let's move forward. Here we have some types of corrosion, in which we have uniform attack, which is also known as general corrosion, in which oxidation and reduction occurs uniformly over a surface. Then we have stress corrosion, which is also known as stress corrosion cracking, in which stress and corrosion both work together and form cracks. Then we have erosion and corrosion, in which erosion is a physical phenomena and corrosion is a chemical phenomena. So both are combined, elevating the failure chances. So we'll be discussing these in detail as well. Then we have pitting, which is the downward propagation of small pits and holes. So if we have a irregular surface, it has a small spots in which the corrosion medium can be stuck, it forms, so it succeeds the formation of pits, it succeeds the length of the pits and corroding it. And crevice corrosion is between the two pieces of the same metals, as we have small openings while the rivet is inserted, or where the part is joined with a nut and bolt. In between screws we have very small openings in which the corrosion medium can get stuck for days, and it may proceed to corrosion. Okay, so then we have galvanic corrosion, in which two dissimilar metals are physically joined, and the more anodic one would corrode first rather than the cathodic one. Then we have intergranular corrosion, in which the corrosion is occurred along a grain boundary, and is often where special phases exist, such as stainless steel. We'll be discussing that in detail as well. Then we have selective leaching, in which a preferential corrosion is occurring of one metal in an alloy. So these were some types of corrosion. We'll be discussing each of them, their type, their causes and their prevention techniques both. Okay, so let's begin with the first one, which is uniform corrosion. This is also known as general corrosion, and the effect produced by most is a direct chemical attack. So the direct chemical attack is the very common effect of corrosion in this, and this type of corrosion is first seen as the general dulling of the substance. So what will if you have a mild steel pipe used in seawater, so what we will be seeing that the shine of that mild steel would start to dull itself, and eventually the part would be corroded throughout. So the prevention for this is you should add some corrosion allowance. For example, if you are making a tank of with a sheet with thickness of 4 millimeters, so you know that your tank, your part would be used in the corrosion environment. So what you will be doing is you will be adding another millimeter. You will be using a 5 millimeter sheet in order just to add the corrosion allowance. So next, what you can add is you can paint or you can do metallic coating, such as plating or galvanizing or anodizing. Basically, you know what is electroplating. You can do a chromium plating, you can do a nickel plating, you can do a very gold plating in certain conditions, but it's very expensive. uh, Next, you can do galvanizing, in which you coat zinc on your part. That can be, you can coat a melted zinc, or you can just spray a hot powder of zinc. So both are done. Then you can add corrosion inhibitors. This you can add while the metal is being made, the alloy is being made, while casting. Before casting, you can mix corrosion inhibitors such as molybdenum, vanadium, and manganese, which protect the metal from oxidizing. Or you can do a sacrificial anode. You can provide a sacrificial anode to the part, uh, which would be more reactive than your actual part. For example, you can add you can coat zinc, or you can add magnesium, or you can add aluminum to your mild steel or your steel or iron alloy, so that uh, the zinc or the magnesium or the aluminum which is coated would react first and protect the uh, your main part which is in service. All right. So it would not let the main part uh, corrode, rather than it would, the sacrificial node would itself corrode in order to protect the main part. Then we have galvanic corrosion. So in galvanic corrosion, what is happening is we have two dissimilar metals, or we can have more than two dissimilar metals which are joined together. So the more anodic part would react first, and the more cathodic would react after. But if you have joined two parts with different metals, and they're exposed in a corrosive environment, so that they can fail from the joint. All right. So what you do is you should avoid joining with two dissimilar metals, or you should select metals which are very closed in the galvanic series, so that the difference between the electrode potential is very, very, very uh, less. So this is the first one, is the first cause is using two dissimilar metals. Then an electrolyte. So the electrolyte is your corrosion medium, uh, which would start the oxidation and reduction reaction from your part. The metal would be oxidizing. The more anodic metal would be oxidizing first, and the more cathodic one followed by it. In the current part would be if the two metals are joined together, so that would provide the current path. So for electrolysis, there are the four things required are the cathode, anode, the current path, and the electrolyte. So if all of them are achieved, all of them are present, so there would be galvanic corrosion. So how can you prevent it? You should stop using dissimilar metals, or you should choose metals that are very close in the galvanic series, as I discussed. Then you may choose large anode to cathode ratios, and you may use the high and you can insulate the dissimilar metals uh, by providing some grease or some oil which is organic. And you know that organic compounds are non-polar and polar compounds do not react, so it would resist the electrolytic corrosion, electrolytic reactions in the galvanic corrosion. Or you can use cathodic protection, in which you may use a sacrificial anode, or you may use the impressed current techniques, in which you supply your part with a small amount of current, uh, uh, which basically you are supplying the electrons to the corrosion medium. um, because in corrosion, actually what happens is your part is being providing electrons to the corrosion medium uh, by oxidizing itself. So in order to reduce that oxidation, what you do is you provide the current from a current source to the corrosion medium, and that protects your metal by oxidizing. Okay, so we'll be discussing these two techniques in more detail at the end of the slides, that is cathodic protection, in which we have sacrificial anode, and impressed current technique. Next we have pitting and crevice corrosion. So in that, the principles of both the corrosion are same, but the concentration gradient in electrolyte causes some areas high in ion concentrations that accelerate oxidation. So what happens in this, if you have a very small crevice, small openings, uh, as you can see in here, that this part has a very has a crevice, has a small opening, in which water or a corrosion medium can stuck for days and days and days. It will start corroding itself. So there is a very high concentration gradient. There is a very high concentration of the corrosion medium, which is stuck uh, for a very long period of time, rather than you can see on the top and the sides, which are not corroded yet. So this causes crevice and pitting corrosion. And if your surface is not uh, smooth, as you can see over here, that we have small pinholes and small pits, which stores the corrosion medium inside, and uh, that corrosion medium, when it is stuck for a long period of time, it starts to react with the metal, and starts oxidizing it. So this is basically pitting and crevice corrosion. So how can you prevent your part? You should not join your part with rivets or any screws or any nuts or bolts if you know that your part would be exposed to very high corrosion environment. So you should directly weld your part rather than to rivet or to apply nuts and bolts. Since nuts and bolts or rivets may have small openings, as you can see over here that this part is riveted, so this may have very small, very tiny openings in which the corrosion medium can stuck and start the oxidation. Use non-absorbing gaskets. You should not use metallic gaskets which may be consumed while corrosion. So you should use plastic gaskets or rubber gaskets. And then you should also have a very polished surface, if you can afford to have one polished surface that is free from small pits or cracks that store water or they store the corrosion medium. Then you should also always add drains if you know that your part can have stagnant water, or your part can you know uh, store water in some crevices or pits. You should add drains in order to drain out the water or the corrosion medium. Or you can add again the corrosion inhibitors while maintaining the chemistry of the alloy. So you should add molybdenum. You can also add vanadium and manganese in your metal to increase the corrosion resistance of your part. So next we have intergranular corrosion. This type of corrosion is generally and usually been observed in austenitic stainless steels. So you know that stainless steel have a very high amount of chromium in them, particularly about 18% of chromium. Uh, so what happens is, when you cool down the stainless steel from austenitic region to around 550 degrees centigrade, so around, if you hold it in that temperature, so what happens is the chromium which is present in the grains is depleted from there, and it comes to the grain boundaries, reacting with the carbon and forming some complex chromium carbides. In this case it is Cr23 and C6, chromium 23 carbon 6, which are very brittle. So what would happen, that the whole ductile grain would be brittle at the grain boundaries in the presence of chromium carbides, and these are complex chromium carbides. Also, the chromium from the grain would be depleted, and that would be reducing the stainless property of the steel. So this is also called sensitization of stainless steel, and this is usually observed in the heat affected zone of the welded part. So you can see that if you are doing welding, so this is the part, the welded joint in which you have inserted certain amount of metal, or you have just joined the metal by melting. So the heat achieved from the melting would be diffused throughout the part, since the part is a conductor. You know that metals are conductor, and there would be, so this line you can see has intergranular corrosion. Why it has intergranular corrosion? Because this part has been soaked for a couple of minutes or a couple of hours, you can say, not hours but a couple of minutes, at the sensitization temperature of stainless steel, which is around 550 to 800 degrees centigrade. So you can see that here you have intergranular corrosion, in which you will be having the brittle complex carbide precipitates, and the part would fail in the better manner from the grain boundaries, not from the grain. Alright, so what you will do is, to avoid the intergranular corrosion, is you want to avoid the sensitization temperature of stainless steel while heat treating it and while welding. Alright, so the prevention techniques are high temperature soaking. So you should, if you have intergranular corrosion in your part, what you will do is you treat your part at a very high temperature in order to re-dissolve the chromium carbides and make a homogeneous composition. And again, while cooling, you should avoid the sensitization temperature of the stainless steel. You should also use low carbon content in your stainless steel to minimize the carbide formation. If you don't have much of the carbon, you won't have the complex chromium carbides in your grain boundaries. And you can also use some alloying elements while making your stainless steel, which are such as niobium or titanium, which has a very high tendency of forming titanium carbides and niobium carbides than that of the chromium, because the affinity of titanium and niobium with carbon is more than of chromium, so it would react first than chromium. So the chromium carbide would not be formed, and the stainless property of the steel would be as what you have desired. Then we have selective leaching. This is also called de-alloying or demetallification or parting or selective corrosion. So what happens in selective leaching is, one constituent of an alloy is preferentially dissolved by the environment, leaving the de-alloyed metal very weak and often porous, sometimes observed in aluminum, iron, cobalt and chromium alloys. So What you see here is you see a brass fittings used in toilets and other plumbing fittings. So these are made up of usually brass, and you can see this is the corrosion product over here, which is zinc. So brass has copper and zinc. So the zinc is preferentially corroded, is preferentially oxidized. It comes out from the copper matrix and reacts with the environment to form a corrosion products, leaving behind the copper, which would be porous now and which would be weak, because the strength of brass is achieved by combining the properties of copper and zinc, not alone with the properties of only the properties of copper. Okay, so the zinc comes out from the copper matrix, from the brass matrix, and is reacted with the environment, corrosion environment, to form zinc oxides, and the copper remained behind is weak and is porous, leaving the strength of the part very low. So this is basically selective leaching. This is also observed if you have any chance to visit the cast iron tanks, which had greater than 2% of carbon and the rest of iron. So what happened in that in that case is the carbon is graphitized. It comes out from the cast iron matrix and it reacts with the environment, leaving behind the porous uh, iron tank, which has a very low strength. So that is also an example of selective leaching. So how can you prevent it? Is by using a protective coating to protect the surfaces. You can just paint it, or you can add an organic coating, or you may add some corrosion inhibitors, as we discussed in the previous corrosion types. Then we have erosion corrosion. What happens in that is that abrasive fluids impinging on surfaces commonly found in pipings, propellers, turbine blades, valves, and pumps. So if you have a pipe which has an elbow pipe, as you can see in this case, so if your fluid passing from inside this pipe has some abrasive particles, uh, which can abrade the internal surface of the pipe or the propeller or the valve or the pumps, so this is a mechanical damage, and the abrasive particles would also uh, start to uh, create a corrosion environment, and the internal surface would also start to corrode chemically. So there are two types of effects in this. One is the chemical effect, the chemical degradation, which is corrosion, that is done from the abrasive fluids or any fluid which may act as a corrosion medium, and the particles, abrasive particles, which may tear out the or wear out the internal surface of the your pipes. So it has a combined physical and chemical effect uh, on your part. So how can you prevent erosion corrosion? Is you should change the design to minimize or to eliminate the complete fluid turbulence and impingement effects. So what is basically turbulent effect is your you should avoid your uh, let me make it for you. If your direction of flow of your fluid is like this, is an irregular form. Okay, so this is basically turbulent flow. So you should avoid this turbulent flow in order to uh, reduce the erosion and the corrosion effects, and you should try to make your flow as streamlined, straight lines. So you can see I've not drawn it very accurately, but you can get an idea what is a streamlined flow. So you should try to create a streamline effect in your flow rather than of that of turbulence. Okay, so this is how you can eliminate erosion. Then you can use other materials that resist erosion. You can use a very strong material that resists the physical effect from the abrasive fluids, uh, um, and you should remove particulates from the fluids that may cause the erosion. Okay, so you can just filter it out, or you can add a sieve. Uh, uh, you can just add a sieve from your onto your pipe where the fluid is inserting. So it depends uh, what your applications are. Then we have stress corrosion. So in stress corrosion, you can from the name you can get an idea that the stress is being involved in this type of corrosion. So there is a mechanical stress, and the part is being loaded, and it is exposed to a corrosion environment. So it is also known as stress corrosion cracking. The cracks grow along the grain boundaries as a resultant of a residual or applied stress or trapped gases or solid corrosion products. As you can see that the grain boundaries, the crack is initiated and propagated through the grain boundaries, and usually it is common in brass alloys which are exposed to ammoniacal environments, which is the corrosion environment for brasses. And if the brasses are stressed in that particular corrosion environment, so the corrosion in that case would be stress corrosion. So there could be any type of corrosion in which your part is being stressed is called stress corrosion or stress corrosion cracking. The amount of stresses which are generated in that part may be very low, but still it would be called as stress corrosion cracking. So the prevention techniques for this is to reduce the stress level or to eliminate the stress levels, or to control the corrosion environment to stop the corrosion if you cannot stop the stress, or you can just heat treat it, so your alloy or your metal can resist that stresses. Okay, while in surface. So next we have hydrogen embrittlement, in which metals lose strength when hydrogen is absorbed through surface, especially along the grain boundaries or the dislocation sites, or in between the grains. It is often, uh, the hydrogen gas is often trapped while we are doing a decorative plating. If the plating is not done in an inert environment and the gases are present, especially the hydrogen is present in that environment, so the molecules of hydrogen or the atoms of hydrogen can be easily entrapped between the decorative layer, plating layer, and the metal, causing embrittlement. Okay, causing the material to fail in a brittle manner. Usually, the high strength steels particularly are susceptible in this case. Uh, so these high strength steels are made in a very highly inert atmosphere, uh, uh, and this the hydrogen embrittlement can be removed by baking. It can be removed by heating your alloy to a very high temperature uh, uh, in order to eliminate the hydrogen atoms or molecules. So now controlling corrosion, we can control our corrosion with self-protecting metals, reducing the temperature kinetics, and adding of inhibitors or the cathodic or sacrificial protection. So in order to first the self-protecting metals, in this the metals form an oxide layer. As you can see in this figure, that the metal in stainless steel forms an oxide layer. So in stainless steel we have chromium, and the chromium forms an chromium oxide layer that protects the metal uh, for further degradation from the corrosion environment. Okay, so this oxide layer which is formed is would be acting as a barrier between the corrosion environment and the bare metal or the alloy which is exposed to the corrosion environment. And you can also see this in the aluminum window channels, that they do not corrode at all in if you you know expose them to any corrosion environment, because they form an aluminum oxide layer on top of that, which acts as a barrier between the bare metal and the corrosion environment. Okay. Furthermore, you can reduce the temperature kinetics in order to slow down the effect of corrosion. You can add inhibitors by chemically alloying them in your metal or alloy. So what they do is they have a tendency of having a very high resistance to the corrosion itself. All right. Or you can just paint your material, which is very cheap and which is very common way of protecting any surface. Or you can do a cathodic protection. So in the cathodic protection, what you have is you use a sacrificial anode, or you may apply some current, some electrons to your part in order to prevent it from the corrosion to occur. So in sacrificial anode, what is happening is that let's suppose you have a steel pipe inserted underground in a corrosive environment. All right. So the steel pipe is very prone to oxidation because there would be chlorides, there would be oxides present inside this underground soil. So what you will do is you will just add a magnesium layer or a magnesium anode or a zinc anode or a aluminum anode that is more active than this steel pipe. Okay. So what will happen is the magnesium anode, or you can use zinc or aluminum, these anodes would react first in order to protect the steel pipe, because these anodes will be supplying the electrons to the corrosion environment rather than the steel pipe. Okay. So this anode would be consumed, and so that this is called a sacrificial anode. So we can easily replace these anodes and protect our pipelines, especially the underground pipelines. On the other hand, if you're not using an anode, we can if we have a lot of electricity, we can just provide some of the electrons. So the current provided in this case is very less in microamperes or in milliamperes. So the current is provided from a rectifier, and that current is provided to the corrosion environment. The electrons are provided basically to the environment in order to protect the tanks. And if we have a power outage, we can always have a backup anode, which was used as a sacrificial anode. This can be again of magnesium, zinc, or aluminum. So if there is a power outage, we can get the electron supply from our anode. Okay. Next we have surface coating and passivation. So if you want to get want to have a passive layer, first of all, some of our materials like aluminum and stainless steel, which you see in this paragraph, form an oxide layer on top of that, reacting with the oxygen and further protecting the metal from oxidation, which is called passivation, as I explained it earlier to you, that it happens in cases of aluminum and stainless steel alloys. Or you can just what you can do is just paint your material. You can anodize your material, or you can plate it. You can electrolytically plate your material. You can do electroplating that protects your part from corrosion. So that was it from the corrosion slides. Thank you.